James Bell of the Boxing Source here with another video, and this video here is to pose a question to boxing fans. I guess it's to a certain group of boxing fans that are out there. Um, and the question is, why do some boxing fans criticize PBC or Premier Boxing Champions? Um, or specifically guys that are managed by Al Haymon. This has been a question that had been posed to me by someone that I communicate with pretty frequently, and he basically posed the question out because the thing about it is like when it comes to two particular things in the sport of boxing, it seems like those that are within Premier Boxing Champions or under the management of Al Haymon, they have been able to do things that other fighters and other promotional companies haven't been able to do. Now, we have seen instances where you've seen cross promotional fights or fights that have two fighters with two different management companies. But what we haven't seen as much is for fighters that are in other certain promotional companies go over to Fox or Showtime in order to have a fight with any of the Al Haymon managed fighters. But on the same token, you have had guys that are managed by Al Haymon that have been sent over to fight guys that are under other promotional companies. For example, when it comes to guys managed by Al Haymon in the heavyweight division, such as Charles Martin, such as Eric Molina, or a Andy Ruiz Jr., or Dominic Brazil, those guys have been able to fight Anthony Joshua. When it comes to a Daniel Jacobs is managed by Al Haymon and is under the promotional um, umbrella of Matchroom Boxing. Um, you've had other examples that are out there as well for Al Haymon managed fighters that go to other promotional companies or go fights under other cable networks other than Fox, Showtime, or whatever it is, and you don't see it that much on the other side. So that is one thing that I'm trying to get at is why PBC fighters are able to do that, but fighters from other promotional companies aren't able to go to Fox and Showtime to fight one of the PBC fighters. The other thing that was also posed to me was that when it comes to big fights, has any of those big fights really happened under these other networks in comparison to those that are under PBC? Now, you do have the default Canelo Alvarez fights that are on the zone. But other than that, what other real big fight that we have had within the past couple of years or so, or particularly last year? When we talk about big fights, first ones that we think of are Canelo fights like Canelo Jacobs or Canelo versus Kovalev or Anthony Joshua fights. But last year, Anthony Joshua had two fights with Andy Ruiz Jr., who is under the advisement of Al Haymon. But on the flip side, PBC has had instances where you have, the likes of, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury fights that happened, in the past. But also, you've had the unification fights between Errol Spence Jr. and Sean Porter. You've also had Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman. That was also a big fight. But anything as far as like an in-house fight from these other guys hasn't really happened. It's either been like cross promotional fights or fights that are between two fighters with two different promotional companies. Like for example, Jose Ramirez Maurice Hooker, that was top rank in Matchroom, coming together for that fight. Or Vasyl Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell, that's a cross promotional fight. But when it comes to in-house fights, have we really seen that from these other promotional companies? You can name those if you want, but it seems like when it comes to criticism within PBC, it seems like they don't necessarily get as much credit for making fights the magnitude of a Errol Spence versus Sean Porter or a Manny Pacquiao versus a Keith Thurman in comparison to a lot of the other notable fights that have happened within the past 12 months or so that have, basically been cross promotional fights or fights that have been under the, like, say, the World Boxing Super Series. Like the Regis Prograis versus Josh Taylor fight, World Boxing Super Series. Or something like the likes of a Naoya Inoue versus Nonito Donaire. So that's the question that I have out there for y'all. You could go ahead and answer the question within the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to the Boxing Source on YouTube and catch the Boxing Source Radio Show podcast live Sunday 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or catch it on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. On that note, folks, I'm out. Peace.